Hi, and welcome to Glendale Today. I'm Glendale City Councilmember Bart Turner, and I represent the Beryl District, which is in the center part of the city. But today's topic is actually going to cover every district in the city, and that's because we're going to be talking about our pavement management program. Now, with me here in the studio is our city engineer, David Beard, and in a little bit we're going to be going out to a Glendale neighborhood where we actually have some street work going on, and we're going to talk with Max Morales and Shar Johnson, who are from our transportation and our engineering departments. But first, let's talk about pavement management. And as residents know, our streets are in pretty bad shape, and it's not unique to Glendale, it's across the state that streets are in that condition. The recession made it very difficult for us to maintain streets as they should be, and when you don't maintain them, they deteriorate faster. So the council wanted to take on a pavement management program and get our streets back on track. Where did we start?
Well, thank you for having me today. When we started, we did a pavement index condition of the entire city. We hired a consultant. They drove every street. They have some sophisticated equipment that measures the surface, has ground penetrating radar into the subgrade, compiles a score for each one of those, and it has a composite index that we call the pavement condition index, or a score for it. And it's a lot like a grading system between 0 and 100, with 100 being the best and 0 the worst. And each street, we drove every street in town, and each street was given a score.
Okay, great. So we didn't just look at the surface condition of the streets, what you could see with the naked eye. We actually did that ground penetrating radar and looked below the surface to see what the subgrade was like and whether there were issues that we couldn't necessarily see from the top. And then, as you said, we've scored every city street from 1 to 100. And in front of us here is a map of the city with all of our streets. And I guess on this map, they're rated from the best is in green down through yellow and orange, and then finally red streets are in the worst condition in the city. So why are some streets green and others red?
The red are obviously the worst, and it's a composite score between the surface and the subgrade. If you see a lot of cracking or alligator cracking, potholes, it's an indication that the subgrade is bad, and then the surface really shows the symptom of the subgrade. And on the green streets, a lot of them are a little newer, or they've been better maintained over the years, and there's less cracking, so less water intrusion into the subgrade, which is a long-term benefit for the streets. So typically the green streets are newer or have been maintained more recently than the orange, yellow, and red.
Okay, so we have some streets that say are in a window of being in a pretty good condition. Maybe all they need is maybe some crack sealing or something to keep the water from penetrating, or maybe they don't need anything at all. And then other streets, the yellow might definitely need crack sealing, and then as you gradually farther, you might need what we call slurry seal or mill and overlay, or sometimes maybe a complete reconstruction where the base, the sub base, all the way up needs to be done. Is that what we're looking at?
That's correct.
So what's the strategy? Tackle the worst streets first?
No, not always. There's 3 criteria that we look at. Street condition is one of them, and that's the PCI, or Pavement Condition Index. Traffic volume is another. And then the third one is resident calls and also work orders generated by our transportation group. So we know which streets we have to go to more. But the biggest 2 factors are condition and volume.
We have a limited amount of money. I mean, we see that we'll have money coming in future years, but in any given year, we've got a limited pot. So I would think if we spent all that money on the worst streets, it wouldn't go very far.
That's right.
And so maybe, we spread it out so that we keep streets that maybe just need to be crack sealed we take care of that treatment so they don't get worse and need to be slurry sealed. Or a street that can be handled with slurry seal, better to take care of that than have it get worse in a few years and need to be a full mill and overlay. So it looks to me like it's a matter of trying to keep these streets from moving from one window to the next, and compiling in, of course, the traffic volume. The heavier streets need the attention earlier too.
That's correct. It's each successive treatment gets more expensive. The cheapest being a crack seal, and then a fog seal, slurry seal, mill and overlay, and then finally reconstruction. If we can slurry seal a street before it needs to be mill and overlaid, then we can save that money. So you don't want to spend all your money on the worst streets. You want to spend it on streets before they fall to the next conditioner application that's needed.
Before they move into the next expensive window.
Right.
And that's like, I've heard as much as a factor of anywhere from 7 to 10 times as much money if it moves into that next window and requires a higher level of treatment.
Right. The big jump is between slurry seal and mill and overlay, and it's roughly, like you say, 7 to 10 times the cost.
Okay. So how do you begin scheduling in that regard? You said you factor in the volume, but you also probably don't want to spend all your money in one part of town either, do you?
That's right. We try to get an equal distribution throughout the city, and for our pavement management program, we split the city into halves. I mean, the north half and the south half, and arbitrarily we drew the line on Peoria Avenue.
And the reason you do that is?
So we can save some money on the mobilization costs, so the contractor that's doing the work doesn't have to drive from one end of the city to the other. He can focus his equipment and manpower in one general location, either the south or the north. And each time we spend about $7.5 million on each side of the city, and once we spend that $7.5 million, we flip over to the other side, either the north or the south, and then we spend another $7.5 million there.
Okay. So it's just a way to make the tax dollar go farther by keeping the work concentrated and saving on that travel back and forth and relocation of all this heavy equipment to get different jobs done. Well, very good. So David, it looks like this map here is one that shows progress that we're working on currently and in the upcoming few months. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, because I can see, fortunately, this shows part of the Beryl District in the middle, which I'm very familiar with. Also the Cactus District, Ocotillo, and Yucca. So pretty good one to look at. I see at the top where the red streets are, that's the mill and overlay that's just recently been completed. And along with that, they did the ADA, or the Americans with Disability ramps, on the corners of the intersections. So that's a project that's complete and it looks terrific. Now I see quite a bit of blue on those streets in the middle. What does that signify?
The blue is our slurry seal. Those are the streets that are scheduled or slated for slurry seal, and if you look closely, you can actually see a little bit of cross-hatching in there too. And those areas are slated for crack seal. So we want to do the crack seal first,
Okay.
and then once the crack seal is in place, then come back and slurry seal.
Okay. So those areas that are both blue and crosshatch will get crack seal and then slurry seal over the top of it. They're south of Peoria Avenue. The streets I was just talking about a minute ago are north of Peoria, so that was phase 1 in essence, and this is now phase 2. We've shifted down to south of Peoria. So this will be coming up later spring and through the summer, right?
Well, we are not going to stay completely on that schedule. Because of the heat in Arizona, it's difficult, or we don't have great success when we do crack sealing when it's really hot. It gets stringy, it's too hot, it just doesn't cure very fast, and the same with slurry seal. Both the crack seal and the slurry seal, we're going to finish up a little bit between now and maybe June 1st, but after about June 1st, we're going to postpone or have a hiatus and start again in September when we start getting some cooler nights.
Okay, what kind of work can you do during the hot part of the year? Is there much of anything?
Mill and overlay we can do.
Okay.
We have similar issues. It takes a little longer to cure, but you don't have the same problems. It will cure, it just takes a little bit longer when it gets really hot. So we're going to continue to mill and overlay through the summer.
And again, even though this map kind of focuses on the core part of the city, there's work to be done to the north and out west as well, right?
Yes, we
So
have
spreading it around.
an equal distribution.
I can't imagine why. So David, to the outsider, this may look like it's kind of easy stuff to do, but there's really a lot of coordination involved, right? We've got other utility companies and other city projects.
That's correct. When we start the project, we lay out a map like this of areas we want to attack, and then we may get notice from Southwest Gas or SRP that they've got a project in the same area. So we have to switch gears and maybe find another area, postpone it for one cycle, and then get back to it. So we also have city projects that are there too that we have to work around, such as water line replacement or sewer line rehab projects.
So you actually got to be kind of nimble and kind of flexible with the schedule, and it's important that our residents understand that we do intend to get to every street in the city in the next 5 to 7 years and bring it up to a good condition, and then we can maintain from that point forward. But we need their cooperation and their understanding to know that it may not look like a logical order sometimes to them, but it really is about other projects that are going on, how far we can stretch the dollars we have available, and also the volume that the street carries. And a high volume street is probably going to get attention quicker.
That's correct.
I understand we're doing something a little bit different with contracting on this. We're not just doing annual contracts. Tell me about that.
This specific project, we put it out for bid, but we made the contract renewable. So instead of having to, every time we do a project, put it out for bid and select a contractor, we selected one contractor and gave him up to 4 additional renewals in the project. This does 2 things for us. We got a little behind when the economy went through the downturn, so we're trying to get caught back up. So each project on the mill and overlay is $7.5 million.
Wow.
And once they complete all the work, we have the ability to renew that contract as long as the contractor is agreeable with his unit prices. Then we'll renew it, and we'll never quit working. We'll go right into the next $7.5 million project.
Yeah.
And these are not allocated for any specific year. It gives us the opportunity to get caught up for the years where we didn't do anything and got behind.
Okay.
And the idea is to, like you said before, touch every street within the next 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
And get them up to a standard that they were 10 years ago.
Well, I know our residents are going to be happy about that, and they're counting the days until their street gets done. And we have a great program to let residents know ahead of time when their street's coming up and communicate. And we'll talk about that some more in the second half. And actually, we're getting ready to go out to a neighborhood in Glendale now and look at a project, a slurry seal project that's going on this morning. And I'll be joining Max and Shar in just a minute. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.